when they organized the event, they didn't tell me that for the title of my talk for exit strategy would play along with that. I was actually the last away in the audience to actually come up on the stage to do this. Now we've basically run out of wine, and some people are leaving a little bit early. The pressure's on here to deliver. Exit strategy is actually a little bit of a play on words, because my friends over the last couple of weeks have said, "Oh, your talk's exit strategy. Shannon, are you leaving China? Have you not told us something? What's going on with you?" And my workers, "Hey, Shannon, should we know something about the job now?" Exit strategy is actually a play talking about, it's not negative. It has nothing to do with a bankruptcy or a business plan failed. It has to talk about what I wanted to present was an exit and actually an entrance strategy. Because what I did is I exited pretty much the preeminent economy for commercial media arts, and particularly for photography, which is my field and my industry. And I exited from New York, and I came and I entered into China, and that was about 2 years ago. And during that process, I learned a lot about doing business here on the ground in China by hands-on. And I thought that I could share that today and perhaps provide some information that might help you if you're thinking about maybe possibly doing the same here or doing it abroad. So first, a question, is anyone in the audience thinking about having one day perhaps a small business? A small business, maybe 5 or 10 employees, maybe 15. Has anyone thought about that? It's good to see a few hands, and I know some of the audience, some people have already had a small business, and particularly if you're in school, you're thinking about maybe coming back out of school with a small business, maybe you had one and you're going through it. Is anybody in the audience actually interested in living in China? Maybe having a business in China. I hope I see some yeses because we're already here and we're on Beta campus. So that's sort of a default. So I put these together, so let's put it together. Having a small business in China. Has anyone ever given a thought to do that? I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience, Chinese, are certainly thinking about doing it, and a few foreigners who might be considering that. So that plays along with the idea of exiting and entering. You know, small business drives the economy. If you Google search that, you'll find a lot of topics. A lot of them do relate to the United States. And that has to do with the economic phenomena where Obama and the administration wanted to help us out of an economic recovery, out of the Great Recession, by jump-starting small businesses, which was going to jump-start hiring, and then bank loans. And the fundamentals in China may not be that different in terms of what's driving the economy on a small business economic level. You know, China is currently in a program to move 250 million citizens out of the rural areas and into urban environments. There was a New York Times video that showcases, it really wasn't much on the video side, it was sort of an illustration that was rounding the earth, and it was adding up all the different urban environments, cities. And it was not until they added Tokyo that the number actually mathematically come up to 250 million, which is a lot of people if you think about it. That's the number that's planning to move into the major cities here in China. That could be an opportunity. China has a new government focused on change. I think the jurisdiction that took place last Sunday in Jinan may speak to some of that. Chinese incomes are growing. No one in the audience, I'm sure, would disagree that Beijing is becoming quite expensive and that some salaries are not keeping up with that. U.S. and small and mid-sized enterprises, U.S. small and mid-sized enterprises, SMEs in particular, are major beneficiaries of China's economic growth and increasing consumer-oriented society with a rapidly rising middle class and intense urbanization. SMEs, or otherwise small businesses, are meeting China's demand for American goods. Now, you know, that we can take out the word United States as American, because this would pertain to any major economic situation for a foreign company interested in coming into China. This is from William Zaret, who's over at the U.S. Embassy Minister for Commercial Affairs. So let's go back to the slide here. Interests in entrepreneurialism in China are increasing. Now, this is unscientific, but we run an image production unit here in Beijing, and we get real people in the community who come in. They're our models. They're our models for the day. They're there for a few hours, and we often talk to them over lunchtime. We say, what are you doing in China? Or what are you thinking about doing? Someone say, I'm a teacher, or I'm interning over at such and such Chamber of Commerce. But a lot of them say, you know what I really want to do is I'm thinking about having a small business. I'm thinking, really? Because you're just out of school. Yeah, or I'm just out of business school, and I'm thinking about having a small business, or I'm working here, I've been doing this job in big business for a number of years, but my heart is really in doing something on my own. This is a big economy, and so let's talk about that a little bit. You know, it's difficult to start a small business in China, but for those of us who are in the audience are foreigners, we know this metric. It's really difficult if you're from another country. That's the foreigners clapping. We've all been there. Some people tease that, and I have to actually say, that starting a small business is sort of like going through the 5 stages of grief. The last stage, you go through anger, and the last stage is actually acceptance. Well, after 2 years period, I'm up on stage because I've accepted where I'm at in the small business. 3 points here that are very important in terms of talking about if you're interested in starting a business, right? Is owning, I'm in the center here, targeting and connecting on the risk and reward scale of what's possible entering or what's impossible possibly exiting. That's the title of the talk. Starting versus owning. There's a lot of startup events. You can Google that too. You can go to meetup.com and you'll find ultralight startups or lean and mean startups. I'm interested in a group that would actually be called OWN, the Own Up group. There's none of those. Because if you're going to start, you need to own up to the fact that this is actually very difficult. And you need to think about some points before you get started. So talking about owning and not starting, if we can switch gears a little bit, is something really important to think about. Let's talk about on 2 points, reducing outsourcing. This is specific to what I found was successful for us, not necessarily scientific. A little bit of book knowledge played into this, but a lot of hardcore, on-the-ground evidence that this was a pattern for me here in China and also a pattern for me in a decade back in New York City. Do it yourself, the DIY. Choosing vendors based on service. We've made decisions in the business as a group, as a team, where we have decided to use things that sometimes are a little bit more expensive, but they work, and they work well, and they're reliable. So for example, information technology. Who are we going to choose to help support our computers? A vendor that's a little bit cheaper, or a vendor that I can log on, make an appointment, go to the store, meet an expert, learn something, do it myself, and come back and teach my team. Maybe within the span of 5 hours, sometimes within 2. That's really important to me, and it's important to the team. Hardware that lasts. I can't tell you how many times we've gone through inkjet printers that have broken. Those little fancy, you pour in the thing with the ink and it spills everywhere. Trust me, it doesn't work. We went to the most expensive laser jet printer we could get. The thing has been beautiful, and it was expensive, but I can tell you that when you get hardware that lasts, you're going to basically go through hardware that doesn't last 3 times more than the hardware that actually does last on an economic scale. 2 of anything. We have so many things in the office that pertain to 2 of anything. One obvious one is 2 internet lines. We have them by 2 different providers. One goes down, the other one's working. One's faster now, one's a little bit slower later. It really helps us out. Playing into a backup plan for everything. We're always interviewing because we never know when such and such intern's going to go, or someone's visa might expire and they may not want to stay in China any longer, or that someone's family's pulling upon them and they may change. So we're constantly evolving with this process. This doesn't necessarily play into personnel, it also plays into hard drives. We triple backup. We scan business cards and notes made at meetings. We do that because then we can't make the excuse, the dog ate my homework. Increase leading coach your team. Boy, I've really gone through the ringer on this. This was not something that I moved to China as an expert in, but I had to learn it. A great basketball coach generally was a pretty good basketball player. And I've learned that in this economy, if you're going to put together a melting pot of experiences, you're going to need to lead by do it yourself. You're going to need to be able to do these things and show your team how you do it, and then educate them and allow them to spider this technique out to the community by educating another. That's often how we handle our interns coming in. Boom town decisions. I have a friend, he's pushing 65 years old, and he told me, Shannon, this is a boom town. I've been here 10, 15 years, this is a boom town. You need to get around that. It actually is a boom town, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to think about what does a boom town entail. We've had a lot of decision-making going on in the business where we're sort of pulling an employee back in because there's somebody tugging at them from the other side, another industry, a slightly higher pay scale. There's other influences going on with that. That's okay. It's just something that needs to play in with small business locally in China, and particularly in Beijing in this one. Less mentorship. This is more for the foreigners in the room. I've found that in this economy, as compared to the major economy of New York City, that there is generally less mentorship, and you're going to need to look for that. I wouldn't necessarily base it on friends. I would base it on people who are really good, who are thoughtful, who are participants in the economy. Generally, if they're a participant, they're going to be a mentor. They want to be a mentor. They're a participant for a reason. And you can reach out to them, and you will be amazed. They will reach out back to you 90% of the time, if I had to put a number on it. They're out there, and it will really help you through the hard days. cultural convergence, which sort of plays along the theme of tonight, which is you've got a convergence of cultures, not just of Beijing people, not just of American people, but all types of foreign community people coming together. And that's really important to think about because you need to focus on how you're going to put that together in your business as a fundamental basis. You're dealing with humans, human basic behaviors, and putting that together, all of these components. Targeting. Everybody knows about targeting and focusing. Everyone says you need to focus on your goal. If you don't focus on your goal, you're not going to be a success. Mapping the route to your destination. Exiting, entering, and these 5 points in between that I came up with because I found these as a pattern over time, over 2 years here in Beijing, and again, a series of years that were spent in New York City where the pattern was not too dissimilar. Family. This is sort of not always an obvious one, but who's tugging at you for your decision making? Are you in this place where you can, especially if you're moving from one economy to another, or you're moving from your hometown in China and you're going to move to Beijing or Shanghai or Shenzhen, can you do that? Is there anything going on at home, or siblings, or boyfriend or girlfriend, or a spouse? Are you going to be able to own the fact that your new family is actually your workers, your team? Do you know that actually, amazingly, you work for them as the owner? They don't work for you. Assets. Can you afford the expenses involved? Sometimes we forget that, you know. In the United States, we're sort of running on credit cards. But here, you know, do you have either family support, your own support, savings that you've put together? How are you planning to do that? Conditions. Are you willing to endure climate, cultural differences, and the distance? You know, Beijing is this kind of funny place, particularly if you're a foreigner, because as foreigners, we listen to a lot of other foreigners who have ideas about what they're going to do in China and what they're going to do in Beijing. And then on the other breath, oh, I'm leaving this place. You know, in Beijing, you know? I mean, are you coming or you're going? Are you exiting or entering here? Which way is it going to go here? Well, you need to think about that. You know, New York City was not an easy place either. There's a lot of people there, too. And some of them are kind of rude, and they're kind of fast. They walk right by you. They'll bump into you and knock you off to the side. And then also, we have rats, we have crime, we have problems, too. We have pollution. Are you going to endure? Can you endure? You need to think about that component. And sometimes you don't know until you go. Rumor. Have you factually analyzed the advice? I can't tell you how many times someone has told me, oh, well, you know, that's not the way this works, only to find out that's the way it works, you know? You know this, okay? You need to take off the book knowledge and you go and just try it yourself. Again, you don't know until you go. Go to the trouble to find out the information for yourself. And believe me, it's going to be a lot of trouble, a little expensive, some gnashing of teeth. Ask the question 16 times, you'll get there. But amazingly, that answer will help drive you, and it'll drive your confidence. Everyone will exit at some stage. Now, do you have the interest and the perseverance necessary to sustain? It's okay if people around you are leaving. It's okay. In the photo community, we have a lot of persons who go to school for photography. It's fine. There's a lot of people who go to school for business or for the legal profession, and et cetera, but they don't actually end up doing that profession. Or they come to China and they may have dreams and aspirations and they decide it's not for them and they go back to their hometown or they go back to their foreign community. That's fine. That does not need to pull you off your track. So you need to stay focused with these other components and make sure to do the fundamentals play to what you want to do in China or in your small business. If you're Chinese and you're thinking about going abroad or having a business here for yourself in Beijing or elsewhere. So the last part here is connections. Connect. A hierarchy, actually, a pyramid, which is going to throw us a little bit off our chairs, that, you know, there really is no true guanxi. Okay, don't throw tomatoes, please, you know. No cabbages on the stage. Well, you know, there is, but not for you, particularly if you're coming from another place. Your small town to your big town, for someone coming in from the foreign community. This is a little bit groundbreaking to say, but it is actually backed up by someone who has said here, it is very hard for foreigners to build true guanxi. This is from Sean Rain, a founder and managing director of China Market Research Group down in Shanghai, who's half Chinese, whose mother's Chinese, and his wife is Chinese. And he's saying this, not just me now. And he says, take me as an example. Okay? If they do something, it's more because of my wife. As more Chinese study abroad and get acclimated to Western ways, undoubtedly more foreigners will be able to build true guanxi with Chinese. But it is not easy. Sean will also tell you that building a small business in China, in his position, also has not been easy. So back to the hierarchy. So there's really no true guanxi. There is. It's difficult, right? But there is connecting. Now that you can bank on. You can predict that. You can measure that. And here's the way to do so. Culturally aware means understanding each other, which can build that connection process, right? Who, where, when, what, and why. The 5 W's. Well, who? Who are you working with? Where are they really from? Have you really thought about that? Do you know how to spell their hometown? What province is it in? I just learned recently there's Shanxi province and then there's Shanxi province. Embarrassingly. When are the holidays? Every Chinese holiday is not China Day, okay? As one of my coworkers said. What is important in the culture, and when is that important? And why is it important? You can get this through almost a Cliff Notes, talking to your staff, talking to your colleagues, but you can also study about it online. Language to navigate. Now, it is my opinion, if you can eat, if you can travel, and you can purchase on your own, you have the independence to get started to connect. It builds independence, the language capability, okay? But it also builds confidence. And that confidence is going to exude as the coach, the owner, owning up with your team into other things you do. Crossing cultures, the convergence between foreign and Chinese together. And the last one is a mathematical problem. Culture plus language equals time. It's not going to be 6 months, and it's not going to be 18 months either. I've heard a lot of stories. Oh, in 18 months we're up and running. We'll have an article about ourselves. And blah. No, it's going to take a couple years. And then that's the next channel into 5 years and maybe a 10-year plan. And that's okay. The number is different for everybody. Some people will leave and exit, right? But you need to plan that you need to promote a time component to your business. Don't try to do it all overnight, and be patient with it. And that's okay. Culture and language equals time. All right. Your exit strategy. Your IT strategy now. All good things come in threes. That's from my mother. I'm the oldest of 3 children. She told me that since I was in grade school. I didn't really understand it, and now I get it. All good things come in threes. Owning, targeting, and connecting, okay? Owning, to repeat here, do it yourself. If you can do it yourself, don't outsource it. Figure out how to do it on your own, and then teach your team, which means it's important to lead. The leader needs to know how to do. The leader does not send someone else to do it. The leader needs to know how to do the work themselves. Target, it's a choice. It is a choice of either exiting or entering. And there's no shame in exiting. You do not need to feel bad if something you're doing doesn't work out. There's no shame. Just tell the truth. Be honest with yourself. It's okay. There's always something for you. Take that passion, take that knowledge, and put it into something else. You will ultimately, I promise, always be more successful there. But you're going to follow the same path that we put up on screen. And then connecting. It's going to take time to allow for localization. It's going to take some time, and for different people, it takes different amounts of time. I don't want to tell you what my first year was like. I'd like to tell you what my second and third year was like here in Beijing. And it's going to take convergence. And it's going to take that step-by-step process. Slowly but surely, you'll get there. Now, the last part that I didn't tell you. Now, I'm sure you go to the parks around Chinese New Year or around the Spring Festival, and you see, this shape, and then you see a heart, right? Well, people are telling you something. If you're an entrepreneur and you're interested in a small business, they're telling you something, the most important part, and that's your reminder. You've got to love. You must love what you do. You can trust your instinct. You can trust your gut. You can trust your intuition. But most of all, please, you must trust your heart. Thanks a lot for your time tonight.